Okie dokie. So let's pick up where we left off from the last time as America is slowly inching closer and closer to a war with Spain. So what actually sort of sets off the war? Well, the beginning of end of 1897, beginning of 1898, things don't necessarily look bad. There are peace talks going on. The Spanish come up with a reasonable compromise. They are willing to give the Cubans self-government, provided that, the Cubans are just okay with Spain approving what their government does. They will give amnesty, that's essentially general forgiveness, to all of the revolutionaries and sort of try to put things behind. The U.S. is okay with this. Spain's okay with it. The Cubans are not okay with it. The Cubans look at it like this: if Spain is willing to compromise, it's because they're about ready to collapse. So there's no reason to let up on them. American newspapers continue to agitate. They continue to accuse McKinley of cowardice. They continue to write the horrors and atrocities that go on every day in Cuba. The American people are starting to get worked up and itchy. Things in Cuba are accelerating. The Cuban revolutionaries are actually attacking and fighting in the big cities this time, not just in the jungles and the villages and whatever else. This concerns American businesses in Cuba, and they are not too pleased with what potentially could be happening. They're also very, very worried about their own safety. So, in late January of 1898, McKinley sends one of America's big bad battleships, the USS Maine, to Havana, the big city of Cuba, to protect Americans there and to make sure that things are okay. Now, on the morning of Sunday, February 8th, 1898, newspaper headlines blare out at Americans. Worst insult to America in its history. Our beloved president is attacked by the evil, vile Spanish. McKinley accused of cowardice by Spain. This must go unavenged. Okay, so what am I talking about here? On the morning of Sunday the 8th of February, 1898, American newspapers printed a letter. It was a private letter from the Spanish representative to America, a dude named Delome, to the Queen of Spain. The letter simply was an update on the progress of how negotiations were going and what Spain could be expecting. In the letter, Delome simply said that McKinley didn't seem to have the stomach to go to war and that Spain could relax because a negotiation would prove successful and a peaceful solution would be found that will benefit Spain. Well, somebody at the post office or telegram office got the letter, stole it, and sold it to the newspapers, who then ran with the headline focusing on Delome's comment about McKinley being reluctant to go to war. Now, the irony of this is they're all, we have to avenge McKinley. They disrespected our beloved president. We can't stand for this. The Delome letter said nothing worse than what those newspapers were saying on a daily basis about McKinley. But it became another point that people got really worked up and upset about, which makes what happens the following week all the more significant. So on the morning of Sunday the 15th, the peaceful calm of Havana Harbor. So Havana, by the way, is on the northern side of Cuba. Notice this is Florida. There's Cuba. That's less than 100 miles right there. That's like 90 miles. Okay. On the morning of the 15th, the peace of the calm in Havana Harbor is shattered. There's Havana Harbor, sorry. Is shattered. Oops. I'm Just not even a problem. It's shattered. There we go again. Ah, look at that explosion. This is obviously a drawing, but it's a drawing representing what happened in the morning. This is the USS Maine, one of the pride of America's fleet, blown up. Notice the American naval flag falling as the ship is blown asunder into pieces, the guns falling off, bodies blowing everywhere, dead people screaming, the ship sinking, the waters red with blood and reflecting the great explosion, highlighted and silhouetted against the dark background of an early Sunday morning. 258 Americans died. What caused it? Well, the New York Journal was pretty sure. Destruction of the warship Maine was the work of an enemy. Assistant Secretary Roosevelt convinced the explosion was not an accident. Naval officers unanimous the ship was destroyed on purpose. But as we read these, attention-grabbing headlines, we kind of notice if we look down here, officers think Maine was destroyed by a mine. Hidden mine or sunken torpedo believed to have been the weapon. Spanish officials protest too much. Before, after. Before, after. Now, nobody's really quite sure what the heck happened. All they know is that 1 minute everything was peachy, and the next minute the Maine blows up. Spain immediately jumps to the conclusion of, holy cow, they're going to think we did this. The Spanish government declares an immediate ceasefire to all hostilities, ends the concentration camp policy, beginning to remove Cubans from the camps, and declares amnesty for all the Cubans involved. But that's not enough for the newspapers. The papers want war because Spain attacked America. Now, let's talk briefly about the Roosevelt as an Assistant Secretary Roosevelt. Who was that guy? Theodore Roosevelt, Assistant Secretary of the Navy. So, like the second in command in the Department of the Navy behind the Secretary of the Navy. Roosevelt saw the war with Spain as a way to get things that we needed. It was a way to make America powerful. We could get those bases that we needed. It would give us a purpose. It would help young American men who are otherwise directionless and listless and without any meaning in their lives. It would give them meaning. It would make America a great nation again. Now, one of the things to understand about Theodore Roosevelt is that he was a millionaire from a very old, very prosperous New York family. And he was young. I mean, he was only in his late 30s when this happened. And it was his opinion that war is what made men manly. And in fact, his biggest regret was that his dad did not actually fight in the Civil War when he had the chance to. His dad used the option of buying out somebody else's enlistment so that he didn't have to go in. And so Roosevelt saw the war as an opportunity to not only help America, but to give America's people a purpose and to avenge his own family. Now, one day, on the 25th of February, the Secretary of the Navy took the day off. In that one single day that he had off, that Roosevelt was technically in charge of the Department of the Navy, Roosevelt personally contracted Congress and asked them to double the size of the Navy. He ordered that both the Atlantic and Pacific fleets should be restocked with ammunition and fuel, and contacted the Pacific Fleet and ordered them to leave Hong Kong, which is where we were renting a base from the British, and head to the Philippines for the eventuality of a fight breaking out. Now, neither McKinley nor the Secretary of the War were happy about this, but it's important to note that neither of them did anything to contradict Roosevelt, to punish him, or to stop what was going on. McKinley was going to go to war. He was simply setting up the pace and the schedule that he wanted the war to be occurring on. And Teddy just got a little bit of a trigger finger and itchy about that. So that's where we'll leave off for today. We'll pick this up later. Peace and love.